I would like to call the June 9th Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. Can I please have a roll call for all those in present?
I see Mr. Bonin, but I don't hear him.
It's the way we like it.
Cortez present.
Hughes present.
Uh-oh.
I see Bonin is present but can't hear him.
He's got himself muted. Oh, no, he doesn't.
That would be far-end technical difficulty on Mr. Bonin's behalf.
I don't think he's either not there because he did turn his camera on.
All right, and do we have Mr. Davis? No. All right, well, there's three of us, that's enough for a quorum, so we can move along, and when Mr. Bonin decides to come back, that'll be all the better. I do not have any announcements this evening, so we can move directly into the first agenda item, which is the town meeting location discussion with the town moderator. And I do believe we have Mr. Menard present.
And accounted for.
Oh, it's even better. How are you this evening, Keith?
Pretty well. How about yourself?
I have no complaints, good sir.
Excellent.
So, as you know, the board has put a date together for town meeting. We've reopened the warrant as we're supposed to, and I believe we also closed the warrant as we're supposed to. So now town meeting is officially in your hands. So we thought it might be a good idea to start talking about location and what some of your thoughts and ideas were on that and what this board can do to help facilitate that for you.
So there's, I believe there'd be, a couple locations in town that would be acceptable. One of my initial reactions was to use the high school baseball fields because of the proximity, to the high school where we normally have it. But we have to look at making sure the facility that we use is ADA compliant, which I believe rules out the high school facilities. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it's just it doesn't seem to be a great location, for trying to get people down there. So, next best location I believe would be Soldiers Field.
And that will meet with the ADA standards that you're looking for?
I think it comes the closest. It's if we, does the town have an ADA advisor?
Mr. Davis has joined the meeting.
Excellent. Hey, Hal. Matt, do we have an advisory?
The building official.
The building official? All right. So we'd probably want Mark to go check out feasibility on Soldiers and see how close we are to ADA compliance on that. So Keith, what are your thoughts on, if there's rain in the forecast, et cetera, would we do a rain date, cancel town meeting? Or would you want to have a backup venue that would allow indoor participation?
Yeah, I would not want to have an indoor backup. I was in the meeting with, I think Chris Furno also attended the meeting that the state put on about doing outdoor meetings and that, and there's definitely a lot to consider. One of the things that I actually found somewhat troublesome was that you can, and Matt had alluded to this in previous meetings, you can have a mask wearing section. You can have a non-mask wearing section. But even if someone is positive for COVID and wants to sit in the non-mask section, or in the mask section, I should say, you can't really tell them no.
All right.
Yeah, it's a pretty brilliant stroke. Let me tell you. So that said, I don't feel like an indoor facility is going to be conducive to what we're trying to do. And again, we talked about the high school. If we wound up using their auditorium, the cleaning fees would be pretty outrageous.
So how about a tent?
I am fully on board with the tent if one can be secured. And that is, that's something that we're going to have to talk about. We will probably need to rent chairs. We will probably need to, rent a tent, and possibly even some porta potties. I don't know if the bathroom facilities at the ball field are if they're ADA compliant. That's something we'll need to look into.
So it would probably make sense to ballpark, at least try and get some budgetary numbers behind tent, chair rental, and porta potty rental for town meeting and soldiers.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is how big of a tent would we be looking to rent?
Well, is Chris on with us?
I don't see Chris.
I don't see her.
Okay. So Chris has, unfortunately, I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but Chris has some historical numbers, of town meeting attendance. So we can kind of base it, from there.
I mean, in the time that I've been on the board, I think we only went to an overflow room once in my entire time being here.
I only remember one time, yeah.
And I think, what was that, pushing like 300, over 300 people?
I don't recall the number. I mean, it was one of the override votes, and we went to an overflow room. Or more, actually, I think more than one overflow room.
I mean, my thought is it would make sense to plan on rent a tent for 500, rent seats for 500, and then if we have to scramble, we do, but that's, larger than every town meeting I've sat at.
I think we want to err on the side of caution, yeah.
You got any thoughts, Matt?
500 sounds really high.
Yeah.
I'd actually agree with Matt. We're doing
That's
it,
tempting.
on a Saturday afternoon in the fall. I don't know. I don't anticipate a turnout that large.
On the other hand, you have to allow some spacing between people. So if 200 would have been all right, maybe you need 300.
Well, Hal, I think your point is you would probably need space for 300, but would only need 200.
Yeah.
Seating for 200.
Right.
All right.
I also want to be cognizant of the fact that the town is likely to be facing some serious budgetary concerns going forward, and I don't want to I don't want to blow a ton of money on anything that we don't absolutely need for town meeting.
All right. Well, I mean, even if we dropped it to 200 actual with a, your 300 capacity, but 200 actual there. I mean, it does give you a smaller tent and less chairs. So, I mean, it does save some money, but I think that, I kind of think a tent would be required.
I think we're gonna need it, yeah.
Yeah, I agree, unless we wind up starting to get into rain dates. One way or another, I would imagine that we would need chairs. So if we wanted, yeah, I mean, where we'd wind up needing chairs to do a rain date, you'd have to wind up, renting the chairs multiple times, and, so at that point, you're just better off getting the tent, I think.
No, I agree. So what are your thoughts on a bouncy house as well? Just curious.
I think that's a must. And if someone's out of order, more than twice, they get sentenced to the dunk tank.
I'm all in.
If it's a warm day, you might have a line.
That's true.
You might be asking for civil discourse at that point.
Exactly.
I wonder if an organization would be interested in using it the earlier part of the day or whatever, or some other part of the day. It's going to be there for 24 hours, I would assume.
Yeah?
Hal, if you're looking for time in the bouncy house, I think we can arrange that.
And have somebody get married there.
Yeah, I like that. Split the cost with them.
Nice. All right. So, it would make sense that we, for our next meeting, have at least a swag of budgetary numbers on a tent. And like I said, look at it as a tent that would hold 300, but the rental of 200 chairs. Because I don't think that there's, go ahead, Keith.
I said I'd agree with that.
Because I don't think that there's anything, like, on the warrant that we'd open up, there's nothing over there that's overly controversial that would draw.
No, I can't think of anything at this point that we know of that's gonna draw a large crowd, but,
Other than it's the opportunity for people to gather in one place and
right.
after spending a summer quarantined, one never knows. Tim, you have any thoughts on all this?
I'm having a hard time hearing you guys. I'm playing around with my technology trying to make it happen. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear
I
you.
can hear you.
So it,
Mike's actually turned up a little too loud right now.
Connection spotty, both Tim and Mike.
yeah.
So are we, obviously I haven't seen the warrant yet. Is it strictly a budgetary warrant?
I think that when we do it, we're going to go through with everything, aren't we? That was what we had discussed.
Are we okay?
Yeah, you'll have to.
Because it'll be,
There's just a lot of stuff on there that's gonna need to be taken care of
Right.
by
Yeah.
September. When we talked about an abbreviated warrant, that was in the context of trying to just get a town meeting done.
yeah, in June.
Yeah, in and out. But this will actually be it's a lot of house cleaning stuff for projects and road work and little itty bitty takings. And-
Right.
And, but those little itty bitty things have to be done for the big project to go forward. That Cedar Street Bridge is $800,000, $900,000 project. So that's got to be resolved so that we don't lose that grant that we got to fund most of that. So,
So,
Okay.
et cetera, et cetera.
so it'll be a big one, Keith.
All right.
That's all I have.
I can't.
Yeah, and some of the other things we're going to need to think about, we'll probably need more volunteers for this one than we normally do. The state recommended having seaters, somebody to, You want the mask section, and you're over here, non-mask section over here, you know? Kind of guiding people to their seats. The other part that we're going to really need to figure out is the microphone situation. So I'll probably do a, man, it's just so hard.
We'll need a big screen.
My initial thought is to do a, like a microphone that people would walk to. And we would need like some sanitizer so they speak into the mic and then wipe down the mic and go back. There's definitely going to need to be some policies and procedures that are going to need, that they're just going to be out of the ordinary for this meeting, that we're going to need to think about.
We need a big screen too.
Either that
Yeah.
or we'd have to do everything on paper if we didn't.
We don't want to do paper.
No.
The amount of cost for,
Yes, I would rather do something, with a screen and a projector and that kind of stuff. We didn't really do that until I became moderator. So it's not like you can't run a meeting without it, but it's certainly helpful.
so I'll throw a large screen on when we're trying to put a budget together for it and figure out what it'll
Yeah,
cost.
take a look at it. If not, I might be able to cobble something together. I do have a projector. I do have a sound system. So I would just need some help carrying the stuff down.
Okay.
In theory, if we could even, as I was saying before, like kind of broadcast into cars if people didn't want to, if people wanted to participate from their cars, but that, would probably add another level of complexity that, we probably don't need.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be convoluted as it is, so we want to try and keep it as simple as we can.
Right.
Well, I mean, I know Mr. Bonin should be very excited at town meeting at Soldiers Field.
Which one? There's two of them up there. There were three a minute
There
ago.
was 3.
Yeah.
So
Registered as-
we have all of Tim's personalities present in the meeting.
Oh, God.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, if I had my way, I would get to moderate from the broadcaster's box.
That'd actually be pretty cool.
It would.
When somebody goes out of order, you could yell like strike or something like that.
Foul. Yeah.
I like that idea. I think I'm going to steal that one and call it my own.
All you, Keith, I'll defer to you on it. I mean, to me, it sounds like we got some homework to do.
Yeah.
And get some numbers thrown together. And, let's plan on meeting with Keith, like at least, not every week, but every other week if we're still doing our weekly meetings. So that way we can just kind of keep our fingers on the pulse of it.
And again, like I said, you're probably the very next call before you do anything is going to be to the ADA advisor.
Yeah, we can start there. I mean, we can turn Mark loose this week and at least have him come back with recommendations as to how close we are and what we need to do. All right. Hal, you got any questions?
No, but Tim and I are gonna look for a marriage to share the town's expenses.
Excellent.
I love it. If you find someone to do it, I will get my license and I will officiate that marriage.
Town moderator / ordained minister,
Dynamic Douglas, looking for a couple.
willing to share cost of town meeting.
Will you DJ too, Keith?
Yeah, but they wouldn't want that. Here's some more REM, followed by Jimmy World, and then some more REM. Stay in the place where you live. There we go.
Come on, Joe, for the third time in a row.
Mr. Hughes, any thoughts? You got anything?
No, I have nothing to add.
Tim?
What do you add to that, right?
That's why, there's nothing.
So, and do any of the three Tims have anything?
They're discussing amongst themselves.
They can't agree on what to say.
Here's the whole problem. No matter what we do, Tim has the majority vote.
And I can't even decide.
The troika.
Troika. I like that.
All right. Thank you very much, Keith, and we'll do some homework on our side, and we'll probably have you back next week to just review what the building officials' findings are regarding ADA compliance, and hopefully have some budgetary numbers.
Sounds great.
And if we have any luck, Tim, and Hal, we'll find a couple that want to get married.
Right.
This is my my brother Daryl and my other brother Daryl.
Exactly.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Matt, do we have any interdepartmental transfers that we need to review?
If there's no red folder, there's no transfers.
There was no red folder, but I like to just be sure and thorough in the event that the red folder is like, where's Waldo? And then we have to hunt it down. All right. Consider July 2020 month-to-month budget submission and possible votes.
That looks like it got added.
It does.
I wonder if I was the one who added it, because we're a little bit ahead of ourselves. I've delivered a budget presentation to the Board of Selectmen and to FinCom electronically for the annual budget that will fill in through a distribution table into a 12 months, month-to-month budget, knowing that we will probably only use the first 3 months, barring any other pandemic flare-up. So I'm still populating the thing. There's good news in the sense that Maya has extended their deadline for the prepayment discount. So instead of hitting the July budget for both retirement contributions and property casualty lines, which are expensive, and the two together are almost $2 million, we can push off the Maya premium for a month, and that way balance out and stay over the 1/12 minimum requirement. But to really finish the exercise, I need some guidance. As I said when I forwarded the budget presentation, my responsibility is to deliver options to decision makers, which I have done. But which one of those levers do you want to pull? Those are policy decisions for elected officials and for eventually FinCom to recommend to town meeting. So all I know is we can't get there from here without some serious decisions being made, and some decisions will require me to take action fairly quickly. So I'm pleased to report that our collective bargaining units have submitted written documents indicating they are willing to go along with a 1-year 0% COLA. So that can be on the list, because if you decide to go that route, our discussion partners are willing to do so as well. But there was a lot in there. Various reorganizations, various other steps, policy-wise. So I'm going to continue to fill in the budget with my best estimate of what people will, how many recommendations they will be willing to take. And I can always turn them on and off and see what the effect would be on the budget, but I still need everybody to to point me in the right direction on that.
I know I haven't had the opportunity to really dig deep into that and think on it, at least myself. I don't know if the rest of the board has taken that opportunity to really dig into it as of yet, but it might make sense to push 1 week and kind of have us as selectmen do our homework and figure out what makes the most sense and what we feel best about, especially considering action needs to be taken in some of those options. What do you think, Hal?
I agree. Let's see if we can come up with some directions by next meeting.
Okay. Mike, what do you think?
That makes sense to me as well.
Tim? All right.
So, and the other thing is that's a scenario model, so you can turn things on and off yourself to see what the impact would be. If you need any advice on how to work that, just let me know, and we can walk through it. Or I could walk through it the next meeting, but if I want to do that in presentation form, I'm going to need to share that screen.
Okay, I can make that happen.
All right.
So does that sound good to you, Dave?
It does. I'm on board with that.
All right. So we will bounce over question 3 with homework for the selectmen.
But we still do want to submit our July budget after a June 16th meeting of the selectmen,
Okay,
in order to get it approved in time to be safe, so to speak.
we can do that.
Okay.
All right. So vote to declare land as surplus property and possible votes. And this is what we call the Sullivan land, correct?
Yes.
And based off of the frequency that this has been in front of STM, it does fall with the Board of Selectmen as to what to do with it.
So at special town meeting in November 2016, town meeting voted to authorize the board to take and dispose of the subject property by a unanimous vote. And that was Article 10 of that meeting's warrant. So the board is now, not the town administrator, the board is authorized to dispose of this property. I think at this point, we have to kind of bring everybody up to speed. A lot of this has been dealt with in executive session, but since this is where we are in this process, we need to discuss it openly. This land was originally gifted to the town accepted the gift, then the donor more or less reneged on the gift, and town meeting voted to take the land and raised and appropriated $1 for that purpose. All of the eminent domain filings were properly done. The former donor sued over the value offered, thinking $1 was inadequate, and the town has settled that lawsuit for $30,000, which more or less makes up his legal fees and a little bit on top of that, but not a whole lot. This land was always marked for economic development. At one point, Mr. Sullivan, this is where he was going to build his wind farm, because he had a large parcel out there at the edge of the forest, and that's went by the wayside. What's interesting or important is that these lots that have come into the possession of the town were tested for wetlands. They were, looked at for building envelopes and road locations and access points and all the rest of it. So there are plans, and a lot of work was done, a lot of engineering was done on this property that, while it may not still be valid, it would be excellent guidance to anybody who wants to pick up and purchase the land. So it's zoned industrial, and the way this works under Chapter 30B is that the Board of Selectmen needs to take a vote that says we have no municipal purpose for this land, we're going to dispose of it, and then you can direct me to go through the process, which is to advertise it for sale. Its value is sufficient, so it has to be posted at the Central Register as well as in a newspaper of record. The thing is, when you vote to dispose of the land, you also have to vote at the same meeting for the restrictions that you want to put on the future use of the land. All has to happen up front, because those future restrictions have to be part of the advertisement for what you're selling. So that's what this long memo that Rich Bowen and I worked on is all about. It's trying to put together a project and a scoring system for project proposers that the Board of Selectmen would implement. So the process, to declare the property available for disposition, specify the restrictions that will be placed on future use. The next step is you must determine the value of the lots using procedures customarily accepted by the appraising profession as valid. So we do not have to hire a commercial appraiser. We attempted to find people who would be reputable and who would do the work. They're just not getting a lot of takers. That was before the pandemic. Maybe people will be more interested now. But because the language is written this way, it doesn't have to be a certified appraiser. It can be our assessor, using methods that are acceptable to the appraising industry. The board must advertise the sale no less than 2 times in 2 weeks in a newspaper with circulation sufficient to inform the people of the sale. And that last advertisement must occur no less than 8 days before the opening of the proposals. And since you're over 2,500 square feet, you have to go into the central register. I don't know if anybody's ever worked around the central register, but that's a publication of the Commonwealth. If I submit in the middle of June, it would be posted in the July edition. So it takes time, and it's not published that often. The proposals must be opened publicly at the time and place noted in the advertisement. The person selected to enter into the transaction with the town must be published in the central register along with the final price that's accepted. And if the value realized is less than that was determined at step 2, then the central register notice must include the board's explanation for why it accepted a price below the value. That was used as guidance early on. So I have a draft RFP here. Just so everybody knows, when we go out to procure goods and services, we can use 2 methods. An invitation for bids, which is driven by price only, and a request for proposals, which is driven by both price and qualitative measures. And typically, you have to publish an exhaustive guide to how the proposals are going to be scored. You don't open the price envelope until after you've scored all the proposals. But the sale of excess real estate only has to meet the requirements of Section 16 of 30B, which is what I just went through. We can choose to blend IFB method with RFP method, which is what I'm suggesting we do here. So we use price as one major determinant, about 50% of the available points. But then you use the other 50% of the points to accommodate the things that you care about. How big will the building be? Will the project reach fruition in a reasonable amount of time? Because we don't want to sell it and just have somebody sit on it for like 5 years.
Yeah.
Because it's really it's adding the value by putting a building on it and having a business there that is the attraction for the town. And then we'd look at the appearance of the building, and then most importantly, some would say, whether or not it fits the character of the town in its appearance, and whether or not the proposer has a good reputation, which is part of that responsible bidder inquiry that's normally part of procurement. So that's what is all here. After 2 rounds, Rich was satisfied as to form. It's kind of detailed, but I think the logic is fairly clear on how we want to go about this. The town carries the assessed value of these lots between 108 and 110,000. So we should do substantially better than the 30 that we spent to get this clear. In our original conversation, we were hoping that a cannabis retail establishment would take an interest, because it is right on the town line with Webster. It's a long way from the other establishments that have suggested they want to be in town. But Route 16, at that point, forest notwithstanding, is a very busy road. it's a desirable commercial location. Because land is zoned industrial, anybody who proposes a retail establishment would bear the risk of going to the zoning board for a special permit. Because it is not, retail is not allowed as of right in the industrial zone purpose.
Okay. I mean, it seems pretty straightforward, and the sooner we can get this moving along, the better off we are, and the closer we are to starting to realize money back on our investment. So I would
This is what we've been working towards, so yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would entertain a motion to move forward as presented.
So moved.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote?
Cortez, aye.
Davis, aye.
Hughes, aye.
Morris, aye. Excellent.
Now, Mr. Chairman, just for the sake of the record, when you voted as presented, you voted with the following restrictions as presented. Then, I'm not going to go through all the minimum requirements, just the ones that are restrictions on the land. Each proposal must include a total industrial or commercial building space of no less than 2,500 square feet. Total includes all usable floor space in all buildings proposed, including second floor, basement, and outbuildings larger than 120 square feet. Each proposal, that's really the only restriction on the land itself, actually. The rest of this goes to the minimum requirements of the bid. The earnest money would be $30,000, no kidding, right?
Okay.
So if you get the bid and you end up in default, the town will make back the $30,000 it spent to clear up the land so that we can take another shot at selling it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right.
So, suggesting we amend the motion to include the restrictions as you just presented to the board?
No, when you voted as presented, and just
Right,
for the
okay,
clarity of the record,
Yeah, he was just clarifying the record to say that there is a restriction on the building size,
Right. Fine.
which I'm okay with that.
Yep.
Everybody else good?
Good.
Excellent. All right, so let us approve minutes from the previous meeting, which was June 2nd.
So moved.
Motion was made
I will second.
and seconded. Can I have a roll call vote?
Cortez, aye.
Davis, aye.
Hughes, aye.
Morris, aye. Brings us to your, is Tim back yet?
I don't see Tim.
No. How about the other two Tims?
I don't see any of the Tims.
All right, so we went from 3 to none. That hurts me.
Could have left one.
I know.
No. A token Tim.
Your report, Mr. Administrator.
I'm just confused because he always manages to get into the meeting.
He may have a new laptop or something, or,
The governor proceeds apace with his, I've lost track of what, I think we're at phase 2, step 1, right? Am I
Yes.
right?
Well, what time is it?
step 2 starts at 12:01. No.
Look, one of the things that's fascinating about this is the reopening is so much more complicated than the closing was, right? Closing was like a light switch. The reopening is kind of like trying to screw your garden hose onto the spigot while it's on. Because, you know,
How long did it take you to come up with that analogy?
it happens to me all the time. But it's downright nutty, right? So you, especially when it comes to any conversation, it's not a phase 2 conversation, it's a future conversation about schools. But if anybody thinks this is going to be easy with social distancing in the classroom, teachers wearing PPE, getting all the kids to the classroom on a bus, you know, it's, to me, when the superintendent briefed me on some of the things that he they have to wrestle with in the education world around this, I thought, you might as well just stay closed.
Yeah, with classroom sizes, I think DESE put in classroom sizes of 10.
Yeah, so
Yeah, they did.
it's less than pleasant. On the municipal side, as we've said before, we're in no rush to reopen the buildings to the public. You can make an appointment, you can talk to the people you need to talk to. If we know you're coming, you wear a face mask in the building, we let you in, the business is transacted. We're not missing, as far as I'm concerned, I still have not yet gotten a complaint about people having any difficulty with access. And I also have employees who still, because they're in vulnerable populations, would prefer not to have unmitigated, uncontrolled exposure to the public. So we're still there, and I don't see us getting out of that maybe until phase 3. Phase 2 poses the opportunity for our eateries, especially those that serve alcohol, to reopen on a limited basis, especially outside. And there are any number of not so well publicized aspects of the governor's order, but that are very important to us at the municipal level. The governor's order said, notwithstanding any provision of Chapter 40A, that's the zoning provision of Massachusetts general law, requirements for variances or special permits or whatnot, they're all waived, okay? The approvals come from this Board of Selectmen. It's your authority. The first step you have to take is decide the process for an applicant to expand or change their operation. Once you decide that process, and that process can be simply to have Ms. Kane do it in the office and only kick it to you if she's got questions. Or you can modify it, instead of having a public hearing, you still post it for a public discussion at a Board of Selectmen meeting, and you talk about it, and you review the case. The important thing for people to understand, those business owners, is that this authorization is only good till November 1st. It was anticipated, maybe because there's a lot of city dwellers dealing with this, that people are just going to put tables and chairs out on sidewalks or other public areas, and then when November 1st rolls around, we're going to roll it all back and have our restaurant inside. They haven't thought about those locations around the state. Doesn't seem to me they've thought about it much, that are building things in order to accommodate this need to be outside. Because, sure, we'll give you a temporary CO and you can operate outside, but you've built something that may require a zoning special permit or some other permission. And if those are waived until November 1st, the order says after November 1st, we revert to the old regime. Now you've built something, what are we doing, asking for forgiveness? So it's a little bit dicey. The other thing I want people to understand is that while we will go over and way above and beyond to help businesses get reopened, at the end of the day, municipal government, when it comes to land use, is an enforcement agency, not a consulting agency. We're not architects, we're not engineers. We can help you only to a certain point, but we can't fill out applications for people and then review the applications. It doesn't work that way. You don't get the regulator to fill it out for you and then have the regulator decide whether the regulator did good enough work or not when they filled out the application. And this is some of what we're dealing with, is like, look, if you're running a business, you have an obligation to figure out what you're doing with your project. Push your project forward and we'll try to help. So we're trying to work with some people right now and try to get things closed, bring issues to closure so that the businesses can open. Be patient, because a lot of this is new to everybody involved in it. One of the interesting things is ABCC, the Alcoholic Beverage Commission, has decided they don't want to deal with this at all. They're going to trust the LLAs, the local
Licensing
licensing authorities, with all of the decisions on this. So they're wiping their hands of it. Isn't that wonderful? After they waive our zoning.
Amazing.
They're going to wipe their hands of it. So that's where we are. I know we have 2 active applications. The other thing people have to remember is that there is no reason to build an unsafe structure. None. if you're going to invite the public onto a piece of property and put them under a structure, it has to be properly secured. It has to meet the fire code. Pardon me. And if it's the public you're inviting and not a club, you just have to deal with your members. But if you're inviting the public, you have to be compliant with ADA. And we don't make the rules. We enforce the rules. We'll try to help you find a way to be in compliance, but ultimately the responsibility is on the investor, the business owner. So that's what we're up against. It's been quite a bit of activity around here on that.
Is there anything the board can do tonight or at the next meeting to speed up the process?
So on,
Just stated.
right now, I think we're just going to try to get the most urgent case resolved. Because we don't really think, based on the ABC's order, that the board needs to take action on that particular one because the service area outside is within eyeshot of the facility. And so there really isn't any need for it. We're just going to make sure that that applicant recognizes the November 1st, he may put off having to get a special permit by July 1st, but you still have to get one. You still have to march through the process and get it done. And so we can be very formal about this for next Tuesday, but in the meantime, we're going to continue to work the case that's in front of us and see if we can get it done without needing any additional action.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm thinking about what the wisdom would be of asking the board to delegate this responsibility to Suzanne unless there's a question of law. Suzanne and Rich. So if town council reviews it and says, probably not.
I think town council's review is more for liability protection,
Liability.
error protection than anything else.
Yeah.
There's probably still a responsibility for the board to review it.
Why don't, I mean, let's get through the one that we have, and
Right.
we can stew on it, and we'll take actual action
Right.
at our next meeting. That way we can figure out, because I mean, I just want it to be, like, for the businesses, they've already been through enough. Whatever the easiest possible way to get them open again,
Absolutely.
that's what we want to do.
Yep. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman. It's been all budget all the time.
All right, well, I don't have any old business. I do not have any new business,
Nor do I.
so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Can I please have a roll call vote?
Cortez, aye.
Davis, aye.
Hughes, aye.
Morris, aye. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thank you,
good night.
gentlemen.
Good night.
Night.